truth be known, that before this committee was the manufacturing collaborative, who came to us and talked about the fact that it would be so monumental to have a manufacturing officer within state government. And it was a conversation that, quite frankly, was pushed back pretty vigorously in the beginning. But interestingly enough, we were able to get that across the line, and it could not have been more fortuitous, because we had our chief manufacturing officer in place just as the pandemic broke out. And that was a crucial distinction between this state and the other 49 in terms of how we fared through that pandemic, keeping this sector opened and functioning and working and helping them to pivot in this global situation. So we look forward to hearing from you again in terms of, your issues and initiatives, and to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any comments from our ranking or members? So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to compliment the manufacturing sector, particularly, this discussion regarding to the point that the chair mentioned, the aging, those that were sort of retiring, and knowing that we had a workforce shortage in front of us. This started well over 12, 14 years ago, and you guys began this road. And what's happened in the last 10, 12 years is there's a paradigm shift that's taken place. And we know that you don't need to be successful, or you don't need to go to college in order to be successful. And I think you guys were in the forefront of that, letting everyone know that there are jobs, great paying jobs, and you don't need that 4-year education, perhaps some certification, and then you can go on from there. But in addition, you also opened up the eyes of the educators by letting them know, hey, you're not preparing our youth for the skills that they actually need after they go, or once they go into the workforce. So I'm happy with what you guys have done. You guys have been the sort of the head of the spear in this. And now, you guys are starting to talk about, affordability and trying to retain some of that workforce here in the state. But we do have the issue of high housing costs, as well healthcare costs and other things. So whatever input you guys can provide would actually, be extremely helpful, because we don't all have the answers up here for sure, but it's hearing what you guys have to say goes a long way. So thank you again.
So I want to thank the members for their attendance today. I'd like to call our first speaker to the podium, Paul Lavoie, Chief Manufacturing Office, the Office of Manufacturing.
Well, good morning, Commerce Committee and Manufacturing Caucus. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. I am Paul Lavoie, Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer. I am the second person to serve in this role. I've been serving since February of 2022, so I am quickly coming up on my 3rd-year anniversary, and I stand on the shoulders of our first Chief Manufacturing Officer, Colin Cooper, who, as Senator Hartley said, led the manufacturing sector through the pandemic. And we all owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Cooper for his work in making sure that manufacturing continues to be a strong sector here in the state of Connecticut. I want to first thank you for creating this role. I often say within the state and outside the state that I have the best job in America, because I'm the only Chief Manufacturing Officer in America. This is the only state that has made a commitment to manufacturing at the level that we have here in Connecticut. And we have a long history of that. You should know that in 2012, when you created the Manufacturing Caucus, you were the first state to do so. So Connecticut was the first state to have a bipartisan manufacturing caucus, and there are only 6 other states that have followed our lead. We're also the first state in 2015 to put in forth the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, a reoccurring fund that we use to invest in the manufacturing sector. And we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and we've invested $135 million over that 10 years into the manufacturing sector. And then at the request of the Connecticut Manufacturing Collaborative, of which you'll hear from today, you had the courage to create this position. And just to give you an idea of the impact of this position, Manufacturing Digital Magazine did their top trends in manufacturing for 2026. And number 5 was that more state governments would create leaders in manufacturing like the state of Connecticut has. So we're receiving national and international recognition for the foresight to create a chief manufacturing officer position and to create the Office of Manufacturing. I want to share with you a little bit about the impact that we've had over the last couple of years, and then share with you what we're doing to make sure that we're supporting the manufacturing sector. Since February of 2022, we've added 3,800 jobs to the manufacturing sector, and we've added over $2 billion in GDP growth in the manufacturing sector over the last 2 years. Now, you may say, well, it's interesting, Paul, where's that growth coming from? Well, I will tell you that 15 to 20% of that growth has come from 3 companies. And those are companies, when you think of manufacturing, you might not come to your forefront. They are popcorn, non-alcoholic beer, and tea bags. So Connecticut is the home of the world's largest organic snack factory. Lesser Evil is in Danbury, Connecticut, has expanded to New Milford and is looking to continue to expand. Athletic Brewing in Milford, Connecticut is the world's largest non-alcoholic brewing facility. And Bigelow Tea in Fairfield, Connecticut is now the nation's largest producer of tea bags. Close to 3 billion tea bags are all blended within Fairfield, Connecticut, and then manufactured at their 3 plants in Fairfield, Louisville, Kentucky, and then also in Idaho. So you wouldn't think, the growth is coming from areas where we have a very, very supportive environment to grow manufacturing. And of course, our aerospace and defense industries continue to grow. Our shipbuilding industries continue to grow. Our medical device industries continue to go. There are manufacturers out there that are doing $50 million in revenue that I've sat with who have plans to go 5-fold in 5 years. And so when you go from 50 million to 250 million and you're growing by 2 billion, again, you can see these growths are coming from companies across the spectrum here in the state of Connecticut. In the Office of Manufacturing, we run 46 different programs. Those programs are all designed around our 3 strategic pillars, which are to develop talent, build sustainable companies, and drive innovation. Each month, I produce the Office of Manufacturing update on those programs with links to those programs, and I send that out to you. You have a copy in front of you, and there are copies over there at the table. I am not going to go through this report with you today, but I would like to highlight a couple of things that we're doing to be able to solve the challenges based on what manufacturers are facing. Understand that Connecticut's manufacturing strategic plan is all done in regards to issues that are facing Connecticut's manufacturers. Since 2022, I've visited over 275 manufacturing facilities, 83 last year, toured those facilities and had conversations with manufacturers about their challenges and how the state of Connecticut can work to best solve their challenges. So let's talk about developing talent. One of the pillars and one of the initiatives in developing talent is how do we inspire the next generation of workers? So what I'd like to share with you is the programs that we're currently running from K to 16 plus to make sure that we are providing the workforce that Connecticut manufacturers will need for the future. We've made a $2.6 million investment over 2 years in FIRST Robotics and VEX Robotics to ensure that any student that wants to get involved in a STEM program has the opportunity to do so. We recognize that there was a disparity. Well-to-do towns had great programs, underserved towns didn't have great programs. We have since leveled that playing field. We've added 50 new programs, all in alliance districts, to give every student in the state of Connecticut an opportunity to participate in a robotics program. We've done career roadshows where we bring manufacturers together with middle and high school students to introduce them to manufacturing careers. we were able to expose over 7,500 kids to careers at over 150 manufacturers across our roadshow program. We provide apprenticeship funding for manufacturers that want to run apprenticeship programs. Our technical high school, in response to Connecticut's manufacturing strategic plan, changed the electronics program to robotics and automation to meet the future needs for robotics and automation of our manufacturing sector. CT State has responded by doing what we call industry-led, demand-driven workforce development. They are working down in Norwalk with ASML around an optical program to meet the needs of the optical industry, which is a very large industry here in Connecticut as well. And we're working very closely with CT State on aerospace programs to be able to support our aerospace industry. We couldn't not have a conversation about the work that we're doing in the eastern part of the state with Electric Boat, with the Eastern Manufacturing Regional Sector Partnership, with the Workforce Board there, the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative, and the Youth Pipeline Initiative. Recently, Mark Reha, the president of Electric Boat, has slowed down the recruiting efforts because they're at pace right now. They're doing a much better job at retention, and they're doing a much better job at hiring people, but the supply chain is now the focus. They don't have the parts necessary to make the machines, so hiring people at this point in time doesn't make sense. And I had a conversation yesterday with the head of supply chain at Electric Boat about how the state of Connecticut is going to engage with Electric Boat to help support those supply chain initiatives. Internships, we support college internships. If you learn in Connecticut, I want you to earn in Connecticut. We want to keep kids here. If you go to school out of Connecticut and you live in Connecticut, we want you to come back. We want you to keep your mother happy by coming back home to Connecticut. So we've got programs that create sticky relationships between these college students and the manufacturing industry to make sure that they know the opportunities are here, that they could stay home. We've implemented the Faculty Fellowship Program. The Faculty Fellowship Program takes 8 professors of engineering out of their environments and puts them through Industry 4.0 training so that we can then update the curriculum at our private and public universities to make sure that those universities are teaching kids the skills that are necessary in today's manufacturing environment. From K to 16 plus, we've built an entire ecosystem to be able to support the future workforce. Additionally, you'll have available to you a program that we launched called the I Got It Made campaign. The I Got It Made campaign is designed to reach people about careers in manufacturing. This is to reach people across the entire spectrum. This is equivalent to a college lookbook, which goes into the guidance offices of every high school. So when a kid is looking at options, they can look at manufacturing as an option. And in here, it has what careers are available, but more importantly, where you can find those careers, which include our colleges, our Connecticut CT State, and all of our colleges and universities. So there are some jobs in manufacturing you don't have to go to college for. There are some jobs that you do. And we're pretty confident that if you get into the manufacturing sector and you want to advance, you're going to end up going back and getting some form of education as well. This program has received national acclaim. I brought this to Representative Courtney, and he is going to commit to bring this to the floor of the House of Representatives to show what we're doing here in Connecticut. And just to give you some idea of the campaign, we've reached over 12.9 million people with this campaign, and we've had over 2,000 downloads of the lookbook, of which most of them have come from Facebook. And if you know what that means that it's parents that are downloading the Facebook because kids are not on Facebook. And that is our quest to get to the final frontier as it relates to changing the perception of manufacturing and creating a positive perception of manufacturing in Connecticut. And that is, how do we reach the kitchen table? How do we reach it where those decisions are being made, where we can get all kids excited about manufacturing careers, but if they come home and mom and dad say, we're not interested, our work is going to fall apart. So we're working very hard to get to parents and to reach parents as well. So just wanted to demonstrate some of the programs that we're running as it relates to developing talent. As far as building sustainable companies, it really falls into 2 areas. How do we help companies in Connecticut grow, and how do we reduce the cost of doing business? In building sustainable companies, we have Airbus has come to Connecticut to tap into our aerospace capabilities. NASA will be coming this year in 2025 to tap into our suppliers around space. An aerospace and defense show that is going to be headlined by Pratt & Whitney is scheduled for this year as well to bring real business development opportunities. And we've made a significant investment in the Connects platform through our partner at Constep, who they'll talk a little bit more about how we're building a resilient supply chain and providing business development opportunities for companies to grow. From cost reduction perspective, we are laser focused on reducing the consumption of energy in the industrial base in the state of Connecticut. You know, an output of our success has been increased energy usage, and we're working very, very closely with Commissioner Dykes and her team on ways that we can reduce consumption in the industrial base so that we can take the pressure off our energy prices and our energy access to energy. We have a federal grant from the Department of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains for $2 million with a $500,000 state match that's going to focus on smart manufacturing techniques to reduce consumption. We have a program called Green Gain, which we fund through the Manufacturing Innovation Fund to small and medium-sized businesses to help with reducing consumption of energy. We have a training and assessment center on the campus of UConn, where they have accessibility to over $400,000 of federal grant monies. We have Connecticut companies that have taken advantage of that. We work with the utilities, Eversource and AvantGrid on their energy efficiency programs, and we bridge the gap between manufacturers and those programs. And I'm bringing Commissioner Dykes to visit large energy users and consumers to understand what their issues are so we can understand the issue greater and develop more programs around that. And driving innovation simply is in 4 areas: the digital transformation in the manufacturing sector, which removes paper and makes us incredibly more productive; additive manufacturing, which allows us to address the workforce issues by replacing it with 3D printing of parts and with additive manufacturing; robotics and automation, really understanding at the core level, we're never going to have enough people. We're never hiring our way out of the workforce problem. And we need to drive robotics and automation to do the mundane tasks that we can't get people to do. And we have the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology and other partners that are working around driving innovation. And of course, AI, and looking at AI, we're working with a whole consortium of folks to potentially get a National Institute for Manufacturing for the adoption of AI and National Institute for the Adoption of AI and Smart Manufacturing from the National Institute of Science and Technology, which also funds CCAT as well. And all of this is great unless we're working together as a single unit, it really doesn't matter. And I hold monthly collaboration meetings with my partners, CBIA, ReadyCT, Constep, CCAT, Office of Workforce Strategy, one-on-one meetings with their leaders to make sure that we're in lockstep and that we're working together to solve the challenges of the manufacturing sector. Additionally, I've convened a manufacturing cabinet, which includes a lot of those members, CT State and Advanced CT. And those are folks that we share and collaborate on a regular basis the work that we're doing so that collectively we're all moving in the right direction. I meet monthly with the Connecticut Manufacturing Collaborative, which you'll hear from again, and I share with them what we're doing, but more importantly, solicit feedback from that group. They are the voice of the manufacturer, and I seek their advice, their counsel, and their input on a regular basis to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the manufacturing sector. And of course, I can't leave without talking about our Manufacturing Ambassador Program. Our Manufacturing Ambassador Program is a true gem in the state of Connecticut. It meets the needs as to how can other people help and how can we make sure that we're breaking the myths around manufacturing. We are 833 ambassadors strong, and these are people who work across all spectrums. They could work at lawyers and payroll people and accounting people, but we all share one common mission, and that common mission is to support and grow the manufacturing sector in the state of Connecticut. In addition to that, I serve on 14 different boards and commissions across the state, including the advisory board of the University of Connecticut's engineering department, Sacred Heart's engineering department. I'm the vice chair of our technical high school system. So we are making sure our voice is being heard in those areas. All those boards and commissions are in that monthly report. And then my team, the Office of Manufacturing team, which is in that report as well, serve on 4 additional boards. So to the Manufacturing Caucus, the Office of Manufacturing in the state of Connecticut is focused on driving systemic change and driving growth in the manufacturing sector, and it's working. And I thank you for your support. Preliminary numbers have said we've grown GDP by another $2 billion, and none of this can be done without your foresight and your support of the manufacturing sector through the Chief Manufacturing Officer position, the Office of Manufacturing, the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, and the Department of Economic and Community Development, where I so proudly serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate the presentation. I'll open it up to questions if there are any. I'll start with either my co-chair and or ranking. Any questions from there? Okay.
So thanks, Paul, for being with us, and that was a lot to drill down on. And we're going to have some time to do that as the committee work begins to roll out. And in the short time that you've been here, you have really got your arms around this and gotten boots on the ground, which is very important to us. In the interest of time and also deference to all of my colleagues, a number of who, by the way, are also online for today's caucus. I guess I need to know, as we go forward in a legislative session, what are the priority pain points? A lot has been covered. And we continue to distinguish ourselves, I think, nationally with this, in this sector. But we've got some new landscape that's going to be going on. You know, there is this conversation about tariffs. We've also, you know, maybe embracing this reshoring, nearshoring. And yeah, workforce is, that's going to be the eternal challenge, and it's not just us. And to your point about automating and I 4.0, robotics, AI, and those kinds of things, we recognize the work that you've done to try to position us on the front lines and need to continue to do. It's a very rapidly moving conversation, and we appreciate, you know, the challenges of that in and of itself. Energy is obviously an Achilles that translates not just in this committee, but through the General Assembly, and is a priority, I think, for all of us. And then we get to the subject of regulations. And I'm interested, because you're boots on the ground, you've met with all of these manufacturers from a regulatory standpoint, across all spectrums in manufacturing. We're interested, you know, if there are areas there that we need to focus on. Thanks. Thank
Excellent.
you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
With that, I'll open up to questions from the members. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you. We're concerned about tariffs, and just on January 16th, the governor announced the Strategic Supply Chain Initiative, where we're going to incent companies to reshore and vertically integrate. That has already been going on here in Connecticut, because we have funds available to stimulate that. One of the most important things that we can do is to continue to put catalyst capital in the marketplace for manufacturing, because it is so capital intensive, to be able to support that. I will tell you, we had a $25 million fund to be able to do that. Within the first 2 days of the announcement, we received over 40 applications, of which some of them are very, very strong opportunities for access for this funds. Workforce will be, that's an entire problem that we're going to have for the next generation. And it's, again, it is not indigenous to the manufacturing sector. It is every single sector. The beauty of the manufacturing sector is we can take pressure off of other sectors through automation, and we can then provide a little bit of relief on that as well. And then continuing to drive innovation. As far as regulations go, certainly moving the proposal that Commissioner Dykes is going to submit as it relates to the Transfer Act and moving to release-based regulations is important in the manufacturing sector as well. Taking a look at ways to make it easier to do business through permitting and through accelerating going through the state process. The Office of Manufacturing offers a full concierge service to manufacturers, which means that they're a single phone call. They can call the Office of Manufacturing to get any issues that they might be having accelerated for them. So we have worked very closely with DEEP, with Department of Revenue Services, Department of Consumer Protection, other areas where there have just been simple misunderstandings with state agencies, and we've been able to accelerate, which gives, having somebody on staff to be able to do that is critically important as well. And so you're going to hear from industry after me, and I think it'd be interesting from them, from their perspective, what it is that they'd like to see from ways that we can make it easier to do business as well. Generally, when I hear something that we need it easier to make business, how do we make it easier to do business? I'm usually generally looking at a program to be able to do that, or a way that I can help that individual manufacturer. So I'd be really interested to hear what industry has to say on that to support some of the things that can make it easier to do business in the state of Connecticut.
Before I turn it over to our ranking, just as a follow-up comment, in that you have someone who's involved in problem solving and addressing the issues for manufacturers in the state. After sitting in this assembly for 6 years, going on my 7th, it would not be bad at some point to get a report from them in terms of the type of work they're doing. I would only be concerned that we're solving a problem, but making sure that we're addressing the process. Because I think that what I find in many times in our government is that we have to find a fixer, or we have to appeal to the governor's, the executive office, because structurally things don't get solved permanently. So I'm comfortable that you can assess the person and their ability to solve the problem, but if there's a process issue that needs to come to the assembly, I certainly would love to hear on that.
Yeah, there's a staff member in DECD that's an ombudsman for these processes, and I will talk to the commissioner about having that work summarized. My work generally is, a manufacturer will call me directly, but there is a staff person that does it for all of commerce across the state of Connecticut. I do believe that CBIA in their report has some language around making sure that we're properly staffing and funding that kind of support as well in DECD. But I'm happy to talk to the commissioner about.
But importantly, the point I'm making is if there's a process issue,
Yep.
I want it brought to the assembly so we can fix the process, not just fix the individual problem. And I'll
Absolutely.
turn it
That
over
is
to
exactly
my-
what we do in manufacturing.
Perfect. I'll
We
turn it
fix
over to the ranking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, great job. I think from
Thank you,
last year
Senator.
to this year, there's a lot of, you and your staff have done considerable amount of work. And kudos to you, to all of you. You mentioned that did I hear right? You created 3,800 jobs?
Since February of 2022, there's been 3,800 jobs created in the manufacturing sector as of December of 2024,
So
between
how
that time
many-
period.
How many are in the pipeline, so to speak, or how many can the manufacturers
Well-
expect to come from your programs, or, through the higher ed as well?
Yeah, we lose 3,500 people per month in the manufacturing sector. Most recently, I would say over the last 12 months, we've kept pace with that number, which means we've replaced those 3,500 jobs. We're full employment in the manufacturing sector with 4,800 manufacturers will be around 4,500 jobs, which means, everybody could have one job open, right? Somebody quits and goes take another job. Somebody has a job open. So there's no such thing as zero in full employment. We have to figure out a number there. And, on all estimates, we're probably around 7,000 to 8,000 open jobs. So we still have work to do. But you can see evidence by, things like, for example, a lot of that was happening in the shipbuilding area, and that's slowing down a little bit. The feedback that I'm getting from a lot of manufacturers is that they're improving their retention rates, which is helping as well. And their automation efforts are helping take pressure off of their hiring as well. So I think 3,800 jobs, I was actually surprised by that number, quite frankly. I was surprised we had created any jobs at all, because I think the task of keeping pace with folks leaving is so daunting that if we lose 3,500 a month, but we can replace 3,500 a month, I thought that was a huge win. When I saw that we had created 3,800 jobs, and again, full disclosure, the numbers are right here on the front of the page, from April to November. Actually, April to November, we've lost some jobs. But, you know, again, going back to 2022 and taking over that number, we've created jobs. But I think we're going to see stability and job growth in the manufacturing sector. But we're going to continue to see productivity gains, efficiency gains, and GDP growth. Simply put, the jobs that we have in manufacturing, people don't want to do. And when we have the wage pressures that we have in the manufacturing sector, it really drives innovation, and it really helps us to drive that automation to make sure that we are getting the throughput that we need. So I honestly, I mean, I've had conversations with the governor, with the commissioner about the fact that I really don't expect a lot of job growth. And when I saw 3,800 since February, I was pleased because my most recent numbers show, you know, basically flat numbers, but continued growth in GDP, continued growth in output. Which means that what we're doing is in fact working. We're able to stay pace with replacing people, but we're also able to grow industry by leveraging the full resources of the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, the Office of Manufacturing, and the manufacturing ecosystem here in the state and our partners.
So Paul, you just said that you have jobs, but people just don't want to go to work for those jobs. What kind of jobs are we talking about that they don't want to do?
Yeah, the challenge that we have is that when you start to look at entry-level jobs in manufacturing and you compare them to entry-level jobs in other sectors at a minimum wage, our jobs are less attractive. The thing that we have to make sure that we're explaining to people is that entry-level jobs in the manufacturing sector are just that. Right. That's the challenge that we have. And that's what the Make It Here campaign is about really saying, because people can sit there and say, well, you know, I can work in a Dunkin' Donuts versus working in a manufacturing sector. And again, I like my coffee, nothing wrong with that. But when you look at the kind of work that they're doing, it's very different. And what we have to sell is the future, because, you know, Hannah Belmont from Westminster Tool says it best. Any person that's looking at a career in manufacturing should never, ever worry about their first job. They should worry about the company that they choose, because if they're worth their salt, they won't have that job for more than 3 to 6 months because of the way that we're growing. So we need to be convincing young people and people looking at career changes that don't worry about that first job that you're going to get in manufacturing, because you're going to continue to grow. You're going to continue to add additional responsibilities. You're going to continue to grow your wages where you won't have that opportunity in other sectors. Quite frankly, we did a study, Senator Martin, because we thought young people thought manufacturing was dark, dirty, and dangerous, and it was their grandfather's industry, and nobody wanted to go to work in that, and you can lose a finger. And you know, these manufacturers that are here can talk about their safety records. It's one of the safest places to work now in the manufacturing sector. But what we found is that they have no perception of manufacturing. Because we have not emphasized the trades for a generation, we have raised a generation of young people who apparently think things magically appear in an Amazon warehouse and get shipped to their house, because they don't know that things are made. And that's what this campaign is designed to do, is to create that perception that manufacturing careers are important. And we're undoing a generation's worth of programming. Right? We're undoing a generation of people saying, don't go into the trades, don't go into manufacturing, go to college, get a degree. That's the path to go. And I'm in no way, shape, or form anti-college, but everybody has their different path. And, you know, from my perspective, I'm a first-generation high school graduate who went to a 2-year school, who went back to school nights to get my bachelor's degree. So everybody has a different pathway that be able to get to where they need to get to. And we support that in manufacturing. We just want young people to know that there's an amazing career ahead of them. And we're working very, very hard to change that perception. So it's a long game, Senator Martin. We're playing a long game here. I want to systemically put programs in place that will be effective, for generations to come, to make sure that people in Connecticut understand what we make, why we make it, how we make it, and how you can have an amazing career in Connecticut manufacturing.
Just one more quick question,
Sure.
Paul, and that's regarding the education component of all this. I know a few years back, maybe 4 years back, we passed legislation requiring the school districts to introduce manufacturing and other trades to the students. And I think we went back as far middle school and then high school. How's that going? And is there anything that we can improve sharing the different business sectors to our students?
we absolutely always can do more to improve. There's always so much more work to be done, which is, why I kick the covers off every morning, is because there's so much work to be done. And so do all these folks that are part of the ecosystem as well. But it's working. It really is working well. We're seeing programs at comprehensive high schools that are being reintroduced. I'll just give you an example. Clinton High School reintroduced a manufacturing program. They had not had one, and they did it with industry. There are 5 core manufacturers in Clinton that all did it together with the Clinton school system. 70% of the students in Clinton at Morgan High School want in to the manufacturing program. There isn't enough room for them. And so now we're looking at how do we increase capacity. I will tell you, I never expected them to get to 70% capacity in Clinton in manufacturing. Westbrook, Connecticut just launched a welding program to support electric boat. The entire high school in in Westbrook is about 230 kids. They will graduate 10 welders every year. That's pretty significant for a high school of 230 people to graduate 10 welders in Westbrook, Connecticut. Just a couple of examples of around the state where educators are seeing the opportunities that are available for their students. They're thinking more pathways than they are other metrics, and they're working to make sure that these kids are going to be successful. And my office supports them 100% in any way that we can. Can we do more? Absolutely. I don't have anything specific to how we can do more, but there's always much more we can do to make sure that we're supporting our education system, who is, again, undoing a generation of things that we had done to try to meet the needs of today's young people and to give them hope.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from members of the, no? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Paul. Obviously, since you brought up the great town of Clinton, obviously that's my district. That's what I represent. And one of the opportunities that I think we provided in Clinton was that the parents were able to get involved. And I think you spoke to that earlier about how we get parents involved, in what they, what their children may want to do, knowing that they don't have to go to college, knowing that there are other jobs out there for them. And I think this was hugely important in our town because we were able to get that message out to the parents. We would bring them into the schools, show them what was happening. Manufacturing sometimes does have an ugly underbelly that says it's all dirty. And I think a lot of the people didn't understand all the other job opportunities that are available in manufacturing. So it was, it was very important for us as a community, in the community that we live in, because we knew we could support that. And with your help and things that existed outside of our school district, we were able to bring that in. Same thing that occurred in Westbrook. So I applaud all the work that you've done, and I think that is a huge part that we need to stay involved with, and to make sure that we continue to go after the parents and making sure that they understand this isn't what it used to be. There's a lot of other job opportunities also in manufacturing that their children may be interested in, and giving them information so that they understand college isn't for everybody. And I think we need to have them understand that as well. So I applaud all the work that you've done. It's been great, and I can't wait to hear from everybody else. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Yanukovych. Anyone else? Well, then, thank you, Paul. I think now if I could call to the lectern, Beatrice Gutierrez, CEO of Concept.
Good morning. Can you hear me well? Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to try to go a little slower, and hopefully we can communicate effectively. So Senator Harley, Representative Messner, members of the Commerce Committee, I am Beatriz Gutierrez, President and CEO of ComSTEP. ComSTEP is Connecticut's NIST MEP. And under this charter, we execute in its mission to help Connecticut manufacturers reach their goals by serving as their trusted advisor and resource for all things manufacturing. Thank you very much for having me here today and for the continued support that both this committee and the state has provided to our work over the many years. This year, Comstead celebrates their official 25 years serving Connecticut manufacturing. Our services include many. We are known for lean strategy, for continuous improvement, for business growth. But as we all are trying to transition to serve new needs, the last years we have spent a lot of our work on workforce development, cybersecurity compliance, and readiness for Industry 4.0. And in that work, we work very closely with the Office of the Chief Manufacturing and with partners across the state, including the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, CCAT. Over these last 5 years, we have counted and are grateful for the support we have received from the state to a match dollar to dollar to our federal funding, about around 9.3 million over 5 years. For that work, we have been able to develop programs and serve our small manufacturers in a way that has supported 2,994 jobs of manufacturing, has created 218 billion of employment compensation, and helped generate over 20 million of state taxes, contributing 423 millions to the state's GDP. How do we know this? Our program, Comstead, is a program under the U.S. Department of Commerce, NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that is actually measured by a third party. So every year and every quarter, when we work with our manufacturers, a third party comes and asks the manufacturer to value the services that we provide. Those numbers are collected both at an individual center, Comstead, or at a national network, because this program has one of these centers in each state, plus Puerto Rico, 51. That network provides these numbers, measures them, and provides them to Congress every year to get this program refunded. So it is not only an honor, but a responsibility for my team to be able to have a way to give you a return on investment for the state and a return of investment as a taxpayer of the state. And we're very proud of that work. And we thank you again for the work you done to support us. Talking a little bit about how are we in the last years working with our small manufacturers. We want to bring two areas to your attention that are of concern to us as we try to continue this work. First, in line with the strategic plan of the Chief Manufacturing Officer, we align our work in three main areas in the last years: workforce development, technology and innovation, and supply chain resilience. The workforce development, in that we feel very strongly that there's a lot of suppliers in the market. Our role is very specific to try to help small manufacturers upgrade skills, particularly in the leadership area. We provide a very good program on supervisor bootcamp, because as we know, after the Great Resignation, our small manufacturers lost a lot of talent. And an area of that talent that was lost is around supervisory skills. So we have a very specific program to help manufacturers take employees and upscale them. And they benefit to the funding of the MIF to do that. And we are very excited to continue that work. Technology and innovation. We have an excellent partner in the center, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology in implementation. But what our manufacturers need in that area is to get ready for technology. I 4.0 is here. It's not the future. We need to get Connecticut companies ready to compete in the world and at the national level, particularly companies in our critical supply chains, such as shipbuilding, aerospace, and medical devices. In order to bring these technologies to bear, they need to prepare themselves for that. So Comstead, in that case, brings resources such as lean, qualification, cybersecurity, readiness for execution. And then once we feel that that implementation is going to be successful, we connect them with providers that can get them to be successful and implement in a way. We also provide project management because some of these companies do not have the resources in-house to manage very difficult parts of technology. So we work with all in the supply chain, and we try to connect them to the great resources around the state, both for demonstration, proof of concept, etc. The piece that concerns us in this area is cybersecurity readiness. As you all heard, I'm sure you were watching the news at the end of the year, this is not if, but when companies get attacked by bad actors. We have the example of the U.S. Department of the Treasury, U.S. Treasury Department, that hacked and had information compromised by the deployment of software, a third-party software, and several workstations were exposed to Chinese actors. Connecticut is a state of defense. That is not only an area where we're strong, but an area of proud for us. As Senator Blumenthal says, we're the arsenal of the United States. When you have a supply chain that operates correctly, every piece of the supply chain needs to be safe and protected in order for us to be effective. We have been waiting, as you may or may have not known, for CMCC, which is the standard for cybersecurity under the Department of Defense, to become a requirement. It's called our Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification 2.0. And in good, I would say how things work sometimes in government, we've been around that for like 4 years, 5 years now, saying it's going to come down, the standard is going to come down, it's going to become a requirement. Well, yes, but we're not ready, and the Department of Defense has, in the past, take away pressure from the supply chain. We feel the time is now. We know that, and we are working very closely with the federal delegation on this topic. The standard is coming down in February. And what that means to our small companies is that if it becomes a requirement to even stay in the supply chain, some of our companies do not have the resources to do so. We, Comstead, can provide technical resources to evaluate, to assess, but to keep certifying, that cost could be up to $100,000 for a company. They don't have the resources. So this is real, and it's now. The other part that is very important on that as we move into I 4.0 is that once you are elevating your companies to benefit from all the advantages that technology brings, the Internet of Things, augmented reality, all your drawings being part of a model-based definition, which is the ability to send information across the network with information on your parts, on your vendors. All that cannot happen in a safe manner if our companies are not embracing good cybersecurity models. We're talking about an ecosystem where we make the most critical parts to defend this country. We make submarines, we make engines. All those systems, as big OEMs sends their drawings and requires their suppliers to be able to be compliant, need to be protected. There is not a chance to get what we all get as consumers, which is, here's the letter, we stole your data, you have 2 years of credit, free credit monitoring. That does not exist on a supply chain of defense or of health, medical devices as well. So that's the first thing I wanted to bring to your attention as you're working on understanding what the priorities should be for your work. That's number one, from our perspective. Also, as part of the work we're doing with the Office, the Chief Operating Manufacturing office is really mapping these supply chains, because one of the areas of challenge is we actually don't know where some of these manufacturers are. And we, I mean, the we is the general we's, because Prime sells, buys their products from a tier 1 and a tier 2, and you may not know who is actually doing the part at the last part of that supply chain. It's not only Connecticut, that's a common thing. But as we're trying to move into really doing a good job as a state and trying to validate and measure the risk to our companies, we are working with the support of the Chief Manufacturing Office and the MIF on creating a database that will tell us where the suppliers are. Over the last 3 years, we have received support, not only on the funding, but on the promotion around Connex. That is the chosen platform that we're working on. We work with other MEPs across the network. As I said, there's 50 of us plus 51 in Puerto Rico. And we have meetings every 2 weeks, but even weekly, on trying to really help our manufacturers understand the value of participating in this platform. To date, as of the last report that we provided in June, official report to the MIF, Connex Connecticut has been able to match or create 513 manufacturers with effective profiles. We have been able to match 21, including some with the Department of Defense. We have 199 of those profiles that had been matched or found someone, not necessarily a contract, but someone. And we continue day to day to have this work. So much we believe in this work that we have dedicated a full-time resource to work with manufacturers to update this profile. As you have in new suppliers identified, we had 8,844 customer engagements. So what does this mean? We need your help, and we need everyone's help to socialize to our manufacturers that the resources are there to help them both participate in this connection with others. The advantage of this work we're doing is we're doing it with other states. There is it's a minimal work cost to the manufacturers, because the Department of Economic Development through MIF, the MIF, has provided funding for them. We will continue to work as it aligns with our mission of helping the small and medium manufacturers grow. And it also, as part of that work, we're able to identify gaps for these manufacturers in other areas of compliance, like opportunities for an FDA compliance and certificate that could open new markets. Other areas, have you been, for example, we will ask our manufacturers, are you working outside the United States? If not, let us help you, connect you to the Department of Commerce. So with that in mind, I just wanted to, again, to keep this short, first of all, thank you for the continuous support that the state of Connecticut has provided to ComStat. We are very proud of the work we do, and we're very grateful to your support. Because of your support, we're able to bring, in the last 5 years, we brought $9 million of federal funding to the state. But most important to highlight that this program, the NIST MEP program, and ComStat in particular, works day to day to connect Connecticut manufacturers with national resources, with state resources, with our universities, and to try to bring to bodies such as yours the needs of our small and medium manufacturers, because that is within our direct mission. Thank you very much, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Beatrice. I guess when I started and listened to the conversation, I guess the focus on cybersecurity at some level, well, I guess either disappointed me or concerned me, because I recognize it's a national threat and a local threat. But it's almost a zero-sum game. It's to get people functionally, operationally secure to continue their business practices, right? So I guess the two thoughts are, have you looked at this on solutions that might work with some of our suppliers on a collective basis
Mhm.
in terms of their IT and cybersecurity? And two, competitively, how are we shaping up versus the other states? Because when I think about it from the opportunistic point, if we get a higher percentage of our supply chain certified, we're likely to get more business steered to our state. And are there things we should be doing about that? I'll just leave those two questions.
So the first part, I'll try to respond this in several ways. So I totally agree with you, if I understood you correctly, that at the end of the day, each company has to bring their own resources to bear to get the work done. And what's going to happen, I think, is some will not be able to compete and they will be consolidated as part of normal market forces. So at no point I'm looking at accepting or proposing that there should be a subsidy to those that don't want to participate in what's important. Compared to other states, I think this is something all states are struggling with. We just happen to have more density of defense companies than other states and being smaller and more impactful by that. Because the challenge here is if these companies don't comply, at the end of the day, once an OEM says you need to comply, you comply. And if they're not able to comply, there are other players that can take the work. And that's part of the challenge. The challenge I'm bringing to you is that, yes, it is a capital markets. And if we put, let's say our companies are not there, there may be someone else in Seattle or in Texas or in Carolina that can do it. And we do have, in that sense, the state has competitors. A lot of the work is, while it's very important, can be transferred somewhere else. The solution, I feel, and that's my personal opinion, doesn't reflect anyone, it has to come down from the OEMs, and the conversation I've been having with our federal delegation, it has to be in the contracts to have not only the requirement, but the funding to help those that are under that. But that will have to come through there. But I felt it was important for me to bring it to your attention, as there are some help that is provided already for small ones to the MIF. It is mainly for assessment, which it makes sense, but it is a critical issue that we'll see more. If these companies do consolidate and stay in the state, that's great. If these companies go out of business, those are job loss in Connecticut.
Yeah, I think you misinterpreted my question, which is I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity space for consolidation of the IT function
I think.
among multiple companies, whether we'd be better looking as both a manufacturing and as a state to encourage, can we get a third-party back office for the supply chain to work on that cybersecurity issue?
That's a
I
very
mean,
interesting thought. I have not thought about that yet.
It might be worthwhile to consider.
Absolutely.
Because you're asking small and medium-sized manufacturers to focus on cybersecurity when they're focused on production. And
Absolutely.
you're asking them to get certified.
That is a very good point.
In the history of banking and everything else, people have outsourced their back offices, and there are players who can get certified to do that. I don't know that that's happened at this level.
There is some level of that, but not at the point you're proposing, but I think it's a great opportunity to look into it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Rivers.
Very quickly. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh. Good morning.
Good morning.
Regarding, excuse me, the cybersecurity issues, have you worked with Department of Homeland Security at all in their CISA?
We work with CISA. That's
You do?
correct. We work with CISA directly, and we actually not only have worked with them to bring some concerns, but help bring some of their information and their protocols to our supply chain.
You know, because they have representatives here in Connecticut
Yep,
and throughout
absolutely.
New England.
We work
So they're
also
close.
with General Ivan, which handles,
Yep.
he manages our guard
Okay.
and security protocols.
And then regarding supply chain, of course, everybody's got their own supply chain and they just branch out all over the place. I know we had discussed this last year,
Mhm.
but have we made any progress with, say, for a small company here in Connecticut, they need whatever the supplies are, that some other company in Connecticut makes those supplies
Yes.
so they can get them quickly and cheaply or whatever?
That's part of what we were, in those numbers, there is
Okay.
some wins on that area.
Yeah.
Actually, one that we found, which was phenomenal, it was 3 miles away from where the other company was. And
Oh.
they were buying from Vermont. So we are working on that very directly. And you're right, those are the bigger wins.
Okay, and one last one, if I can, which covers the prior speaker too. In going out and speaking to high school students, all right, we're trying to push, you go to college, you could go to the military, you can get a career in something else like this. And I visited places. The high school kids do seem to think that manufacturing is the two big wheels, cranking smokestacks and oil and grease and everything. Yet I've been to places where the manufacturing is done. Guy has an iPad or some such device, poke, 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 and he makes whatever the product is. So using the skills that all of our children have today, I would think they would be really good candidates to work in one of these places here. I think
Absolutely.
it's just a matter of getting the students in touch with the business, maybe some type of field trips or something like that. But that I would think that would help a lot.
Thank you. We had partnered with Ready City, which does a lot of work in high schools to get some of that message out. But on a very small scale, what we done is we actually hired an intern for cybersecurity from Hartford. He graduated from college, and we're sending him to talk to people about things like this, because cybersecurity is not unique, but manufacturing allows careers in many areas: marketing, PR, cyber technology, accounting. So we do, from our standpoint, a little bit on trying to educate young people about how many options are in manufacturing.
Thank you.
I thank you. I turn it over to my chair.
Yes, thanks very much, Beatrice, for being with us today and also for your work in the manufacturing area and previously in the Department of Economic and Community Development. So the cybersecurity is obviously a front burner issue for all businesses across the spectrum, but manufacturing obviously is very important, as you point out, in terms of the fact that we are very important to the Department of Defense and needing to have all of our supply chain competitive so that it doesn't go off to another state, another company. So in working on this issue, boil it down for me. How do we lead to reach manufacturers and try to connect them and also educate them? I mean, in our last conversations, we were talking about I 4.0, that we needed to reach, the medium and smaller folks down the chain because they are one-stop shops. They do everything, wear a lot of hats. So once again, it's about building up our sector and our small and medium manufacturers who, quite frankly, are, I would say, the most vulnerable here with regard to competition.
Yeah, so several parts. I cannot agree with you more and with Representative Messner that these people are running their business, and all these things are externalities to them, and they're just coming all at the same time. I 4.0, cybersecurity, this whole discussion on tariffs, all this is affecting their ability to do work. And just to put it in context, some of these companies are 25 people. When we talk about small manufacturers, 25 people, 30 people. And a lot of them, 3 people are from the same family. So we're not talking here about great enterprises with a lot of resources. That's why organizations like ours have this mission to really focus on getting the boys there. So the first part is awareness, and we spent a lot of time basically, and with the mapping of the supply chain has been helpful, trying to begin prioritizing those in critical supply chains. Everybody needs to be protected, but definitely people in these critical supply chains. So awareness. Also, the chief manufacturing officer has spent a lot of time working with the OEMs to bring their suppliers in and have these conversations. The last one I had with the head of supply at Sikorsky, and they have, they say, what do you need? And I say, I need you to tell your manufacturers that this conversion to I4O, this model-based definition, all these things need to happen, but that they need to comply with these protocols. So that's the first pair. You can go from the bottom up, but you need to also go from the top down. So very important on the awareness and on the requirements. Once you get the buy-in and the interest and the understanding that it needs to happen, the reality is you need to have people that come in and digest it, because it's not an easy standard, has a lot of steps. So in the same in all these technologies, and that's where we have great partners, both partners in our state that are nonprofit like, but also commercial partners. There are organizations that their job is to do cybersecurity or I4 whatever, so they come and help, and we facilitate some of that. But the reality is funding is going to be also a requirement, and for the companies, because it is not an easy proposition. It's an expensive proposition. Some of these programs that are coming out are very helpful when you are putting funds in front of companies to do specific work, but it's not easy. And it's not the state of Connecticut's responsibility to bear this alone. That's why we have very actively worked with our federal delegation. We, as part of the MEP program, will be in what we call On the Hill at the beginning of March, where we'll bring companies, small companies, and us, and some other constituents to speak directly to the delegations. And this is an effort that is done at nationwide. Particularly, we feel that Connecticut has a very supportive delegation, but there are some new members to Congress that need to hear this information. So we will all be there, all the 51 states, basically walking around the mall, and having those conversations with our representative officials.
Patricia, just one last thing. So the ComNex program was funded by MIF.
Correct.
So that manufacturers could participate and avail themselves
That is
to this
correct.
supply chain information. Is that going to continue?
It is being funded again for another 2 years.
Another 2 years.
And also as part of that, so it's funded until December of 26, and starting now. And it also has additional pieces that will be very important and very instrumental in mapping the supply chain. So it's not only at the company level, but at the ecosystem level. And then the Office of Manufacturing will have more access to those risk areas in the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, because I think that from what I have heard vicariously, that this has been a very important service to individual manufacturers.
Yes. And for our perspective, what it has given us is the opportunity to have something to talk about to our manufacturers, to be there to help them, and in doing so, being able to also identify other areas where we collectively can be of help.
Thank you, Beatrice. Just as that observation one more time, I mentioned on the collective basis, not only do I think about it on the collective basis within the state of Connecticut, and I appreciate that this is a problem across the entire defense industry and the supply chain.
Yep.
And I know you're all working collaboratively. However, if we find a quicker or better solution within Connecticut and can begin to solve the problem quicker here, there's an opportunity space there in getting our suppliers prepared and certified sooner within that opportunity, both for the onshoring and domestically, that we might be able to move ahead. So I
And
would say just think about, if I put plant those two seeds in your head.
no, you have, and thank you. We had, and I'm glad you brought that in because we have had conversations with both academia, like University of Central Connecticut State, which is doing a lot of work around that, and then with private partners. But I like your idea of really thinking more globally and putting together something that can accelerate that transition.
Thank you very much. We have no further questions. Then I'm going to call up Carmen.
Thank you.
Carmen Romeo, President of Fascia Chocolates, Small Manufacturers Association.
Carmen, we could all use a little chocolate right now.
My name is Carmen Romeo. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to out of their Waterbury home. Oh, I'm sorry. I am an electrical engineer, and I've joined Fascia's in 2010 from a career in sales and manufacturing, beginning with GE in the 1980s. Fascia's Chocolates is a small but very diverse company for its size. While our SIC code says we are a manufacturer and we sell wholesale and we sell direct to businesses, we're still primarily a retail store, which includes events. So we're also a tourist attraction. So we're a very diverse business. My colleagues in the CMC are going to address in detail very key issues, such as allowing pass-through entities to be eligible for R&D tax credits and the skilled workforce shortage. These don't directly affect Fascia's Chocolates, but as SMA president, I highly endorse them. They are very, very important, and I know they'll be spoken in more detail. Fascia's has used programs supported by the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, such as MVP and apprenticeship, and they have been very helpful and made us make investments just because they were available to help. So their MIF is an extremely important thing to continue. We're currently looking at some technology improvements and long-term investments, and MIF does have programs under it, like the Innovation Voucher Program, which will be very important to our decision to move ahead with some technology programs. So I totally support the MIF continuing as is and even better support. Fascia's made an investment in solar in 2021. In most months of the year, we generate more energy than we use with enough credits that we actually don't have an electric bill for a portion of the year. But today, our electric bill is approaching the level it was before solar was installed. One little known fact is that the public benefit charge we talk so much about is actually based on the total energy we use, not what we buy. So I'm not getting any benefit from solar because that charge is based on my total usage. It has nothing to do with what I buy. We definitely, as you look at new programs and as a state, we look at energy sources, that's going to take some time, but one easy change would be to provide relief and have that public benefit charge be calculated on our net use, not our net use, not our gross use. I don't think a lot of people understand that in the bill, but it's actually a significant part. Another area which is directly affecting us is the lack of opportunity to offer health insurance for our employees. Fascia's currently has 43 employees, but we're only 8 full-time. When we started offering health insurance a few years ago, I literally had to break my family apart in order to offer such a policy. My other eligible employees, 2 of them had state worker spouses. 2 of them were able to get subsidies from the exchange. So I literally had to take my son, my wife, and myself and put us on totally separate policies at a high premium in order to just have a program sitting there waiting to have new employees come in and be able to offer them. Well, all that's to no avail because we've now been dropped. Cigna exited the really small. We don't have 9 employees. So all that was for naught. And I've got to go find personal insurance. I have a few employees right on the cusp of being eligible for medical insurance. Of those 8 full-time and some of my part-time, but now I have no program to offer them. So I went above and beyond to try to do it, and it was all for naught. So I urge you to not let special interest get in the way and pass us a law allowing associations to bring together small businesses to offer medical insurance, like 30 some odd other states have. I'd like to take a little bit of my remaining time to be a little bit beyond manufacturing. And the first is minimum wage. And it's really, especially our yearly indexed increase. Most manufacturers are paying excellent wages for skilled workers. The majority of Foster's workforce does not need specialized training, and we're very labor intensive. I spend 50% of every dollar on payroll. Doesn't leave a lot for everything else. 52% of our employees are seasonal part-time workers. They're there because they want to be, not because they have to be, and they're making minimum wage. Our part-time people, a very, very core piece, which constitutes those single moms trying to run a household, young people just starting out. These are the people that minimum wage was supposed to help, but in fact, it's actually hurting right now. And the reason is because of the hours they work in my business, for every dollar I pay a seasonal part-time worker, I can pay $2.50 more an hour to my part-time workers. And I'd rather do that than continue to pay these people young kids in college, in high school. Yeah, some retirees who just want to work. Minimum wage is fine, but the more it goes up every year with the index, the more it's going to hurt the people I want to give the money to, which is those moms with single moms with a family and young kids starting out. And I'd love to even pay the seasonal part-time workers who are exceptional. But to offer them any more when I'm already spending 50 cents of every dollar on payroll is very, very difficult. And finally, one word about tourism. And I realize we're in a manufacturing caucus here, but I know there's a lot of people supporting. In addition to my manufacturing related roles, I also serve the Western Connecticut Tourism District on the executive committee as the treasurer. I've been a long time participant in the industry. So I want to report to you that our Office of Tourism is doing a superb job with the lowest budget by far of any New England state. Tourism is the only place where you can get a guaranteed $3 back for every dollar we spend. And it's even higher than that, upwards of $10 for every dollar. So I urge you to put us on par with neighboring states and give our tourism department a dedicated revenue stream. You may or may not know that over 10 years ago, when Connecticut increased the hotel occupancy tax to nearly the highest in the nation, that a part of that money was supposed to go to tourism. Well, that promise was very quickly broken, and that would be one great place to start. Thank you.
Well, Carmen, thank you very much for your testimony. You hit a couple of high notes. It's not lost on me sitting on the insurance committee that our small manufacturers are in need of association healthcare plans because they need to be able to offer competitive product and negotiate a rate in a pooling process. And that's the only way to get there. So hopefully I will continue to advocate for that. On the tourism dollars, I tend to agree with you. I'm not sure if I want to see them on advertising or infrastructure that supports tourism, but I would like to see something reinvested in our experiential tourism. I've been looking, as part of Commerce this summer, we held hearings on Mystic and the tourism. Mm-hmm. And it's not singularly focused on Mystic, or the bill was, but the issue was to look at the problem solving and to figure out what we could do and how we could apply it in different parts. So I really appreciate your testimony. Lastly, in going forward and off the record, or on a one-on-one, it'd be helpful to hear conversations of your interactions with the state agencies, and if you find it to be smooth or rough, and how well we attend to your needs. Because I think all of the agencies that, who serve our constituents, and effectively, we need to make sure that the process is smooth. In the prior testimony, I asked for, that if there were problem solving, that it not be problem solving, but process solving. So that not only are we answering your question, but the next guy behind you, hopefully who isn't a competitor in chocolates, but a manufacturer, that we solve that problem continuously or in process and not just on a one-off basis. So there are things there that need fixing. I appreciate that.
Right. I'd like to make one comment about, it is much better today. I sat in that room about 7 years ago with the CMs, other people from the other manufacturing associations, when we, came up with the idea of the chief manufacturing officer. So things are much better today than they were 6 years ago. I will say that.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to my illustrious co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carmen, for being with us. Maybe we could get the chocolates another time, but because they are the best. But I'm very interested in the example that you shared with us on the energy situation, net use versus gross use. And that's something I hadn't heard previously. I'm wondering if you might be able to summarize that for us, cite your example, and share it with the caucus, i.e. the Commerce Committee.
Yep, it's very simple. When
Yeah.
you,
If you could
at
put
first-
it, if you could put the, right.
Oh, I can put it in writing, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, just so that we would have the benefit of that example, that would be great. No, I hear you clearly, and that was something I wasn't aware of, in all honesty. And then I think CT Access just announced another program through the federal government about offering healthcare benefits to employers. It's a program that was just announced. I don't know, how that would translate in your individual situation, but that is another issue that obviously we're very, very sensitive to. So thanks for continuing. How sometimes, these things take some time to accomplish. And then on the tourism line item budget, there was, it might have been last year, or at least in the last biennium, a coordinated effort amongst all the tourism districts to put a legislative proposal together about that hotel tax. Again, I think worked with the restaurant association as well. Is there anything in the offing on that?
Yeah, yes, there's been discussions about it, and the Connecticut Tourism Coalition has certainly talked about it as well.
But the time is now.
Yes.
So if you've got that, and once again, listen, I know it's been before us before, but it takes time.
Yep. Well, it
and
was 2% of the hotel occupancy tax when the tax was raised. And then that was quickly, and that did fund tourism directly, and it was a nice steady stream, but it only lasted 2 years until all that
Right.
when he was swept in the general fund.
So my advice to the coalition is back at it.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have any further questions? Representative Machinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on the Energy Committee, so I'm very interested in what you just said about the net versus gross. I'm assuming that gross was put in there because it's easier to recognize it on a bill. It's published on the bill, and net is not, I don't think. So I'm assuming that's why that was picked over net.
Well, every charge on the bill is specific. You got cents per kilowatt hour. And almost all the charges are based on the amount of energy you actually purchase. The public benefit charge is the one that sticks out because it's the cents per, and the kilowatt hours are your total usage, not what you purchased from the.
Right. No, I'm
So-
trying to think, if we change it to net, how do we verify net when the only thing on the bill right now is gross?
No, gross and net are both on there.
It's on there now?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Of 10 charges, 9 of them point to the net usage and 1 or 2 produce to the gross usage.
Okay, so this would be relatively easy
So-
to do.
Very simple thing on the line item, and as the chairperson asked, I will detail that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Any further questions? I don't think I have any online. Thank you very much, Carmen. I really appreciate your testimony. And now we have one of our illustrious former colleagues, Representative Chris Davis, who's now with the CT Business and CBIA, CT Business and Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair People Hartley and Meskers and ranking members Martin and Anaskevich. Thank you for having me here today. I am Chris Davis, the Vice President of Public Policy for the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. And I was a member of the Manufacturing Caucus during my time in the legislature. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you here today. CBIA is a member of the Connecticut Manufacturing Collaborative. We actually administer those monthly meetings each month with our sister associations and with the Office of Manufacturing. We're also the representative for the state to the National Association of Manufacturers. As some of you may have seen, back in October during Manufacturing Month, we partnered with our foundation, CBIA Foundation, along with the Office of Manufacturing and our affiliate Concept to launch the Coolest Things Made campaign and competition here in Connecticut, which featured dozens of manufacturers submitting their products and ultimately in a bracket style. I can't say NCAA tournament, I guess that's copyrighted, but a bracket style competition that led to the Electric Boat's Virginia class submarine winning the first event, being named the coolest thing made in Connecticut in 2024. As part of that campaign as well, we did a manufacturing bus tour where we brought many of you to different manufacturers around the state, dozens of manufacturers during that month, in a week-long bus tour that featured many of our members, as well as many of the manufacturing entities across the state. For CBIA, we originally are a combination of the statewide Chamber of Commerce and the state's manufacturing association. So still currently, 50 years later, about 30% of our membership is still in the manufacturing sector. And I know a lot of statistics and data has been talked about here today, but I just wanted to raise a few more that maybe haven't been mentioned about why it's so important that we support the manufacturing industry here in Connecticut. Currently, there's about 158,000 jobs in Connecticut associated with the manufacturing sector. That is down significantly from the all-time highs in the late 1980s and 1990s. However, it still makes up about 11% of our workforce here in Connecticut. And it's important because the average salary in the manufacturing sector here is $95,470. That's a significant average salary for an industry sector. And it's why it's so important that we continue to support our manufacturers across the state, because they pay about $15 billion a year in wages to employees here in Connecticut and pay about $450 million a year in state taxes. So a significant portion of our state budget as well. And every manufacturing job, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, creates about 5 additional jobs here in Connecticut outside of the manufacturing sector. But there are challenges. We're facing an aging workforce, as mentioned before. We have only recovered about 75% of the jobs that have been lost in the manufacturing sector during COVID. We currently have between 8,000 and 9,000 job openings here in the state of Connecticut. And this is flat growth, as mentioned by some previous speakers, down about 300 jobs in total over the last 12 months. And since February alone, about 800 jobs have been lost in the manufacturing sector. So there's a significant amount of opportunity, and we need policies and programs that will lead to those jobs being filled. And that comes to some of the challenges that we're facing. Affordability continues to be a major factor for not only the manufacturers, but for their employees and the way to attract those employees to Connecticut. The CBIA, each year, we do a survey of manufacturers across the state and release a manufacturing report each manufacturing month in October. In the 2024 report, 80% of Connecticut manufacturers say it's difficult to find and retain their workers. And of that, it's because of the lack of skilled job applicants applying. And about 20% of them noted that it was due to the cost of living associated with those employees. So what we need here in Connecticut is continued focus on affordability. And that's what we ask all of our policymakers here in Connecticut. Each bill that you take up this year, look at it through a lens of, does this make Connecticut more affordable? And this goes to things beyond what you would traditionally think associated with manufacturing. This goes to affordability of housing and access to housing. This is particularly true in southeastern Connecticut, where, as mentioned before, Electric Boat is hiring thousands of employees a year and has a significant workforce, but a limited amount of housing availability. Likewise, childcare plays an important role in getting individuals back into the workforce, especially women coming out of COVID. Childcare is an issue not just at affordability, but just access as well, as there's significant number of slots that need to be filled with children. However, there's not enough people working in the workforce in childcare in order to meet that demand. Likewise, energy and was discussed quite a bit earlier, as well as health insurance and the needs for association health plans in order to satisfy the desires of our small manufacturers to offer health insurance as a benefit to their employees. When asked about some of the challenges that we face in the regulatory field, paid sick leave starting on January 1st was expanded to manufacturers for the first time. We're still collecting information on its impact, but it's real. We're hearing from manufacturers, and actually I had to leave a meeting this morning hearing from many of them about the challenges that they're facing with paid sick leave expansion and the changes that were made last year and the difficulties that that's causing in the manufacturing sector in particular. Because unlike many other industries, when someone just says that they don't feel well or that they want to take a mental health day or hour and they get up and leave and walk away from their machine, that machine has to shut down. And then that product no longer gets to be made. And with the changes made without any kind of prior notice as well, this is very difficult for manufacturers that need to keep those machines running on a continuous basis, and to have an individual call out without notice now is a major impact on them as well. And this is the first time that manufacturers who were previously exempt from the paid sick leave law are now faced with these challenges. Additionally, the paid family medical leave continues to be something that is a challenge for all employers. However, in particular in the manufacturing sector, one example that was provided to us from a manufacturer in Torrington is that they had a small cell of 4 employees working on a product, 2 of which fell in love, had a child. They did not get married. Under Connecticut's paid family medical leave laws, they both are entitled to 12 weeks of maternal and paternal care for that child. And under that law, they don't have to take it at the same time. So now this manufacturer has one person out for 12 weeks and they stacked it, and the next person is going to be out for 12 weeks straight. So they have to find essentially 2 people for 24 weeks to fill that space in order to continue to make their product. So these are real issues faced by our manufacturers. However, there's been some positive things that the state of Connecticut has done over the last few years that CBIA has advocated for that have shown some benefits and will certainly show benefits in the future. This includes the passage of second chance teachers changes last year that allow people with experience in manufacturing to re-enter the workforce as educators in order to try to expand not just our tech schools offerings, but also comprehensive schools, as you heard earlier about Clinton and Westbrook and the things that they're doing at their comprehensive high school. That change that the legislature made last year will have lasting benefits. Likewise, we have supported and pushed for, along with our affiliate Ready CT, the opportunity to offer paid internships to high school students so that they can enter into the workforce and learn from directly hands-on in an internship and be paid for it while they're still in high school, so that they can then enter the workforce directly following graduation and have that skill set to really hit the ground running. That bill passed the Labor Committee unanimously last year. We're hopeful that it will be taken up again this year and ultimately passed by both chambers. As far as regulations go, we look forward to release-based regulations coming into effect. We're continuing to speak with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection about its impact, especially on manufacturing. However, we're hopeful that we can come to agreements that will ultimately be a positive thing for that adoption coming up soon next month in the Regs Review Committee. Tariffs were mentioned earlier by the chairwoman. Raw materials are going to be a great concern for a lot of our manufacturers and access to them and the higher costs associated with tariffs. But it's also important to note the amount of exports that Connecticut has. So in retaliatory tariffs from some of our trading partners, Connecticut has a $15 billion export industry from manufacturing. So if tariffs go into place, you could see some retaliatory tariffs come into place as well. But we're hopeful that with the MIF fund and the innovations that they'll be able to create and work with, that we'll be able to meet these challenges. There's another area that's been very positive, and this is something that was noted in our Opportunity Connecticut Long-Term Economic Plan that was put out by the CBIA Foundation. And that's first and last mile transportation. A lot of manufacturers struggle with getting their employees to and from work here in Connecticut. And the Department of Transportation last year launched a micro transit program that has proven to be quite successful. It is operated by the regional transit district, so some are doing it better than others, some are promoting it more than others. But it is a great opportunity for our manufacturers to be able to connect with public transportation so that their employees can get to and from work in that first and last mile. That's critically important. And Connecticut's manufacturers continue to adopt safety standards that are leading the nation, have helped lower workers' compensation costs here in Connecticut. However, we do have concerns about some bills that have been introduced this year, including one that would allow for substance abuse to be counted towards workers' comp. And its impact, especially on manufacturers, that ultimately could significantly raise workers' compensation costs if the bill was to be approved. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you all for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate the testimony. On the tariffs and exports, you listed 15 billion. Do you have any kind of geography or breakdown at all?
Well, in Connecticut, about 29% of manufacturers are based in the 1st Congressional District. You have 26% in the 3rd Congressional District, which makes sense up and down the 84-91 corridor. Eastern Connecticut makes up about 20% of manufacturers. And then you have 19% in the 5th Congressional District and only 6% down in Fairfield County. So those impacted will certainly be across the state. As you can see, it's kind of evenly distributed.
No,
So-
I was actually looking at destination.
Oh, where they're
Figuring if
heading?
we're having a tariff
Yeah.
war, who's our buyer geographically? Sorry.
So our largest trading partner, I believe, is Germany and Canada. So those two would be significantly impacted, as well as other European Union countries, especially in the aerospace supply chain.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other further questions? For my ranking, Senator Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, your answer to affordability in housing.
What is our answer to that? So CBIA supports all of the above approach on housing. I think it's important to note that it's not just what would be deemed affordable housing that's necessary in Connecticut, but all types of housing that's necessary. So in our Reimagine Connecticut policy pledge that I think nearly everyone on the Commerce Committee and in the Manufacturing Caucus signed, we talk about access to single family homes through a home buyer savings account, the need for middle housing, as well as higher density housing, especially around transit-oriented development that have that access to public transportation for those employees to make it to, in particular, manufacturers across the state. So we're supportive of those measures, as well as adaptive reuse and incentivizing those programs so that you take existing either former manufacturing sites and or commercial buildings in main streets across the state that would be able to be converted into housing without the need to rezone or the need to build new. Instead, keep that character of those main streets and adaptively reuse those properties into housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being with us, Chris. Look forward to working with you as the session goes on. So my question, and you brought up some very important challenges that, you know, we want to embrace and try to make progress on. So on the release-based, so you're telling me that because we just finished the public comment period, and we now have the regs in the process with the AGs, and so the clock is ticking. You have signed off on those that have been presented to the Regulation Review Committee?
So we have not signed off yet. We have a meeting of our Energy and Environmental Council. I believe it's going to be scheduled for this Friday to take a look and get feedback on that. There's a number of improvements from the original version that were released previously till now. So we're going to do that deep dive on these final versions, especially the changes that were made to lower bounds, some of the fee structures, as well as the changes that were made for residential properties. Concerns that we raised as CBIA in our public comments on those issues, and see if they match up with what we think is in the best interest of the state of Connecticut.
So thank you on Friday. So I'll be waiting to hear back from you as a result of that assessment that you have. This is really important, especially because this is now on a real expedited calendar. And we're faced with a situation where there are statutory changes that are before legislative committees. There will be a joint hearing between Environment and Commerce on those statutory changes. I find myself in a very difficult position to adopt statutory changes when we have not come to terms, if you will, on the regulations.
I would note too that there's budgetary concerns. You know, this is a new regulatory paradigm for the state of Connecticut that comes with significant manpower needed in order to follow through, especially with some of the complaints that you might see in there. So the fact that DEEP may or may not have the current staffing to be able to handle the amount of release-based applications that come in is something that we need to be cognitive of as well.
True, and that's why the changes on the residential side are so important, because
Yes,
that's a whole other black hole, if you will. I'm very interested in this a commentary about the last mile transportation, these micro transit initiatives. And I'm wondering if you might be able to provide some more information to us about that. I'm assuming that this has been done in relation to recognize needs that have cropped up. I mean, I know in my own district, we have some suburban towns that, you know, have some sizable manufacturing, and of course, the bus routes, you know, stop at the town line. So if that's what this is dealing with, I'm very interested, and I'd really like to hear more specifics from you.
Yeah, so that program is a pilot currently offered by the Department of Transportation and operated through their regional transit authorities. So it's in its early stages. However, you know, from our conversations with the Department of Transportation is that it's been a positive result. Certain districts are advertising it more to employers and to employees to be able to access it than some of the others. So we're hopeful that they'll learn from best practices from the ones that have been most successful to be able to access them. And to give you an example, it's almost like an Uber service for these employees. They call ahead and they say, I need to be picked up at this bus stop and brought to this manufacturer at this time, and they'll have a car or, you know, a bus or yes, a mini bus, something along those lines that will come and pick them up and make that last mile transportation for them. Because we hear time and time again from manufacturers, but also other employees, to your example, that once the bus line ends, to then get those employees to the place of employment has been very difficult and causes significant challenges, especially in weather like today or over the weekend where there's significant storms or very cold, or if it's raining, for individuals to then have to walk half a mile from the train station or the bus stop has been a real challenge. So this is where this kind of micro transit can really be powerful in getting to that first and last mile and getting those employees to work.
And so where is the pilot, Chris?
So I believe there's one in Northern Connecticut, Enfield and East Windsor have signed on to that. There's 5 other locations across the state. They're kind of geographically dispersed. And I can get you some more information from the Department of Transportation about usage and access, and which towns have it available to them.
Yeah, be much appreciated. Thank you. And then lastly, so any significant legislation always goes through, a process of refinement and perfecting it as we go along. I have heard your discussion about the implementation of the statewide program now on paid sick leave. Is there any proposals that you are coalescing around to do some more refinements?
Short of full repeal.
No.
No, of course. But yeah, we are actually collecting that information now about some changes that can be made to the language. In fact, it's actually a lot of it is about interpretation of the current law and then how can we tweak that language to better refine it. As you may know, the Department of Labor has an FAQ about the new law, and it has over 200 questions and attempts at interpretation to a lot of these issues that are popping up. So it's a lot to take in and digest. So we're currently getting the feedback over the last 3 weeks now that it's been implemented on some of those challenges so that we can be able to work with you here in the legislature to hopefully adopt some changes so that it can be better interpreted and best applied.
Yeah, that's very important. I'm hearing also, kind of, the theory versus the practice, and we're now into the practice phase here. That we have, for example, some public service departments, fire departments that actually are in a position of having to take an entire truck offline because of, these kinds of instances, unannounced, leave. So then you're talking about public safety here. I've also had some conversations with school districts, same thing, where they are not able to meet their mandatory ratio requirements. So, as this plays out, it needs to be, perfected and, address this so that we're achieving our goals, hopefully.
Yes, and there's a lot of questions on the actual back office, the administration of it, as well as if you already offered 40 hours now, do your policies that already existed take effect, or now they need to comply with the rules and regulations of the initial 40 hours required under the paid sick leave? So if you had, for instance, a doctor's note requirement after 3 days, which many businesses do, under the paid sick leave law, you no longer can ask for a doctor's note. So for those first 40 hours that somebody takes, you wouldn't be able to ask for them, but then can you ask for it for any additional time that they take after that if they had other PTO time or sick time available through their employer? So these are the questions that our employers are facing and they're trying to deal with, and that we hope to have. We actually had a meeting of our labor employment law council this morning. So I'm looking forward to heading back to the office later and getting a rundown of exactly some of the issues that they brought up and how we can address them.
Okay, thanks. And once again, we are a long session, but it moves fast. And then lastly, I would like to say, and I think I had a preliminary conversation with one of your colleagues about regulation, the the process in regulations review where some years ago, we have a municipal impact for those who are on regs review, where it gives us an indication of what the effect of a particular regulation is on cities and towns. And then we also included a business impact. And I'm understanding that that perhaps needs to have some clarification. You want to comment?
Yes, so the CMC this year is one of our legislative proposals, is asking for expansion of that small business impact that's done on each regulatory change. Currently, it doesn't do enough of a deep dive. In instance, like, does it require additional paperwork? Does it require additional man hours in order to do the work? So those are things that we would like to see change in the statute to add these specific requirements and when they're doing the review of any regulatory change. So we have come forward with that proposal to the Commerce Committee that will hopefully take it up and look to expand that so that when the Regs Review Committee takes a look at a regulation, that they have the full understanding of its true impact and whether it really met the desire of the legislature when the law was passed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before we release you, on the Transfer Act, given your experience in the legislature, I'd like particular focus on the permitting process and procedures. I don't think you can work on forcing the permit issuance because the issues have to be resolved in the Transfer Act. But I would want to figure out what the monitoring process is for the number of iterations back and forth before, if you will, a clean bill of health is issued. So I can make an assessment of performance. I believe there was an issue arising. There was, I think we were shy a dredging expert, and the dredging applications were backed up close to a year. I wouldn't want to be in the process in the Transfer Act for whatever operational reason that we're not issuing the certificates. So it'd be interesting from the business point of view, what you think the appropriate checks and balances are to the process.
So I think the process certainly needs to be improved. I mean, one example that we have a construction firm that had a stormwater runoff permit that was put into place. They had an issue. They were cited for that issue. They followed the process, submitted changes to the issue, worked with DEEP in order to do that. In the time period that it's taken DEEP to rule on the changes that they wanted to make in order to satisfy that citation, they get cited again and again, even though they have an application in order to address those issues. So it's just an example of the I guess, lack of ability for the department to be able to process a lot of these permit applications, and maybe due to labor force reduction since COVID, various other factors. But it continues to be an issue for companies, not just in the manufacturing space, but across all industries, in order to get these permits processed in a timely manner. So again, putting permitting deadlines in sometimes works to the benefit and sometimes it doesn't. If I were to put my legislator cap on, you don't want to force a negative decision based on a timeline, but you also want to make sure that those permits are processed in a very timely manner in order to move the economy forward.
So, like I said, put that cap on. And the other question might be just a simple public reporting of open permitting.
So in our Opportunity Connecticut plan, we do talk about that, the need for access to information upon those permits, because it's not just deep, but across agencies, that when you submit a permit, it's not always particularly clear where you are in that process, especially in processes that take years in order for them to be completed. And the importance of that on the business community side is you need to know whether or not you're going to be able to build that new structure or install that new product in order to make those hiring decisions and various other financing decisions. So that's why it's important for us to be able to have processes put in place across all agencies that give some transparency as to where you are in that process.
Thanks.
So Chris, we're always trying to get our arms around this kind of thing. It's kind of like, that conversation of articulation agreements. We're always articulating, but we never kind of really connect. With regard to this, so we just heard earlier that we had testimony that there is an ombudsman to cut through the chase and connect with the departments in a case like what you're just sharing with us. Would not that be the answer?
So they do play a role, and I believe that there's only one, if not only a couple of people in that role at the ECD. So one of the things that we've advocated for is an expansion of that so that they could cut across those state agencies. And in fact, as part of that long-term economic plan, we recommended that we move to like a Secretary of Commerce position, kind of a super commissioner position, if you will, that would have oversight over streamlining those processes across the various different agencies that deal with economic development in Connecticut. And that's based off of best practices of other states that have adopted that. Connecticut had a similar role, the COO position under the Lamont administration previously, but that role currently does not exist. So trying to make sure that all of these agencies work together across the board in order to develop this economic development would be a critical first step to being able to have that economic growth that we need.
Okay, but I'm not about building organizational infrastructure. And so in that instance, could they not have, or did they perhaps try to use the ombudsman to solve that problem?
That particular problem from
Yeah,
that construction industry?
Yeah.
I'd have to check with them to see if they contacted that ombudsman, permitting ombudsman, during that
Maybe
time.
we're not advertising it. Maybe people don't
Yeah.
know that we have that position and we offer that service, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's something that's not as well known. I mean, some of the feedback that we got doing our dozens of forums last year with businesses was that they felt like it was always, if you knew somebody in a certain department that could give you a certain answer at a certain time, rather than having kind of a one-stop shop places to go, similar to that permanent ombudsman position. So getting that information out there to the business community is important. We try to do so at CBIA, but I think as a state, we could also step up that messaging to our businesses as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? Go ahead, Representative Machinsky.
Thank you. Chris, I wanted to ask you about the internships. When the interns are paid, does that change liability for the manufacturer?
So this would be for less than, say, 18. So if you're 14, 15, 16 in high school, being able to have access to them. I think when it comes to being able to do certain jobs that are high liability, I think there's still federal regulations about, OSHA requirements that would prohibit those individuals from participating in those. But that is a good point that, each manufacturer or whatever industry they want to take these individuals on would have to make sure that they're compliant within their liability policies to have someone under that age. But if they're authorized to work, which is what this bill would allow them to do, oftentimes that would make that liability compliant.
Okay, thank you. That's come up when I've had discussions with my manufacturers, that liability question. So I was wondering how it would work out, but that you sound like it can work out depending on the type of job it is.
Type of job and type of policy that business has.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Chris. Next up, we have Tony Benoit, or Benoit, depending on how you want to go. Okay, Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance Director. Thank you. I think you need to hit the button.
Is that better?
Bingo.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I'm here from the Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance Regional Sector Partnership, which you're probably not surprised we abbreviate to EMA-RSP, a little easier to say. EMA-RSP includes the companies that employ over half of the 32,000 manufacturing workers in Eastern Connecticut. I am not a manufacturer myself, though I did have a small business in Connecticut for a number of years and then went into education, including many years at Three Rivers Community College in Norwich. So you're probably not surprised I'm here to speak today in support of education to prepare people for jobs in manufacturing. I'm going to give a little bit of background, a little bit of supporting detail, and then end with some examples of actually bills that are proposed to date. As we heard earlier, manufacturers need workers. And I think, Senator Martin, you said to keep the growth going, we need more workers, which I think is very true. The members of EMA RSP have identified the next generation of manufacturing workers as their number one strategic priority. Over 40% of, we heard that 80% of employers report difficulty in hiring. There was at that time about 8,000 open positions in manufacturing across the state. Over 40% of manufacturers are looking for people with high school level education, and only 18% are looking for people with bachelor's degrees or higher credentials. This was as of last year. Also, not all high school students want to immediately enroll in a four-year college. So having high school students better prepared to go directly into meaningful, good-paying, career-starting jobs like those in manufacturing is a very good practice. Also, many of these young people who are not necessarily thinking of college immediately are planning to stay in Connecticut. And so, again, they have housing in Connecticut now. They know what the environment is here. They are a good investment to keep them here in the state. More and more high schools are recognizing the value of providing career-focused education for their students, not simply pigeonholing each student into some college-bound track or another. I have nothing against college, believe me. And in my experience, getting a good job right out of high school actually improves your chances of better education later. Keep in mind, employers do value education. They value communication skills, thinking ability, and work ethic as much as technical know-how. So we're not just talking training. Education should integrate all of these. Connecticut has an opportunity to extend its national leadership by supporting career readiness at all levels of education, including secondary school. Students who are finishing high school should be ready to thrive wherever they are headed next. And that's both to higher ed and straight to work. There's a number of policies being enacted nationally. Some of these are already underway in Connecticut. I'll just list a few examples. One, if we define the success of a high school graduate based on the competence or what that student can do or would like to do, that's very helpful in keeping students on track to achieve competence that puts them into a good job right after graduation. Encouraging intentional partnership between secondary schools, between high schools and higher ed is also an excellent policy, because exposure to lower level college courses, many of which have introductory technical content, can also put students, perhaps ironically, on track for a good job. School districts often do not have the tools they need to capture the right data for continuous improvement. So supporting perhaps a statewide data system or strengthening the statewide data system to help school districts capture this data would be beneficial. And creating templates or examples for comprehensive high schools to create career-focused plans is beneficial. And I'm familiar, our neighbor to the north, Massachusetts, has a program called Innovation Pathways. You may be familiar with that, which encourages comprehensive high schools to provide employer-informed, career-focused educational opportunities to all students, particularly students who might not otherwise have such opportunities. In Eastern Connecticut, we have a program you may have heard of called the Youth Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative, or YMPI. This program is mature. It this year has 12 schools and enrolls over 100 students at the 12 schools. These are young people in high school. Most of them are seniors. They're saying, I would like to go work for a manufacturer in Eastern Connecticut as soon as I graduate. And so they are being prepared through their senior year to make that transition. I'm sure you're familiar with the term work-based learning. This is unparalleled in helping students learn the expectations and cultures of the workplace, in addition to the technical skills they need to do the job. Incentives for business and schools to work together to create opportunities for work-based learning is an excellent investment. There are several states that are putting enabling legislation, and in some cases funding in place to support the creation of work-based learning pathways in high schools. Connecticut's own CTEC system has a provision for work-based learning. The sorts of things that would be helpful is ensuring that the learning in the workplace is applicable to graduation from high school. Most high school students do not have the luxury of saying, well, I'm going to go learn something, but it's not going to do me any good in getting closer to graduation. The CTEC system allows students actually to engage in paid work in their chosen trade, which is an incentive for the student, and that integrates them fully within the workplace and improves their learning. In general, the legislature should support policies and provide resources to promote collaboration between secondary schools, post-secondary education, the workforce system, and employers. So a couple of examples, bills currently proposed for this session. Apprenticeship is a significant form of work-based learning. So I urge support of SB 593, an act concerning high school apprenticeship programs, and SB 20, an act concerning funding for the pre-apprenticeship grant program. Connecticut Department of Labor has an excellent office of apprenticeship and does works, for example, with the YMPI and directly with employers, so that there are really good high quality apprenticeship programs within manufacturing. Teachers with industry experience are in short supply in Connecticut. So another relevant bill is SB 34, an act allowing tradespeople and healthcare professionals to credit work experience toward teacher certification requirements. Happy to follow up on any of these points or answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I thought the commentary was both optimistic, or not optimistic, but constructive and positive. My only concern, and I'd love your thoughts on what level of cooperation in that between our high schools and our employer force. I've seen it more at the university or community college level. I think there needs to be more impetus to provide access to and opportunities to our students to get school credit for opportunities that provide them with access to careers. Chris came up before and testified, I think the average manufacturing salary was $95,000.
Yeah.
That's not the starting salary, obviously, but
No.
we have to think about, are we providing exposure to that? And so do you think those bills are sufficient and necessary, or do you have any other suggestions?
Necessary, but not sufficient. I think that the Youth Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative is a good example of how to foster the collaboration. In my experience, there tends to be a different language that employers use versus schools use. There's different sets of timing. And in this case, we have the Eastern Workforce Investment Board acting as an intermediary to translate between the two entities and to call them to the table. The EMRSB actually it's a group which pulls together the employers with support entities and educational partners. And so that sort of mechanism is very important. For these initiatives to work, it usually is best practice to make sure you consult with the people whose problems we're trying to solve. And this is a great example of consulting with the employers. Educators, of course, also need to be at the table to say what's feasible and what's not from their perspective. But in the case of something like the YMPI, you have a template for a school. You could say, hey, would you like to give some of your students a chance to take a manufacturing job, a better chance to take a manufacturing job right after graduation? And of course, the answer is yes, or they want all their students to be successful. And so then you say, well, I know employers who I can bring to the table. And so we periodically bring those employers to the table to speak directly to the management of the YMPI program. And then that filters actually ends up filtering into the classroom.
And Leslie, have you submitted testimony to this, particularly about the group you just mentioned?
I have not personally submitted testimony, but I'd be happy to do so.
If you could, or
Yeah.
if you have a brochure or PDF that we could send to our clerk, so we could circulate, because when I go back during the session, we get workforce training, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I taught, and some of the halls of academia show up in our hearings. I want to make sure that there's a cooperation and implementation. So I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Any questions from me? Okay. I think,
Hey, Tony, thanks for being with us, and duly noted on those bills that you indicated. But through this entire caucus, I've not heard any conversation about apprenticeship ratios.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. That
So that means it's not a priority.
Yeah, the SB 538, an act concerning career pathways and workforce training, actually does not go far enough, I think, in improving apprenticeship ratios. The SB 388 has some language that is relevant as well. It seems like a very common sense solution. If you look at what other states do, they have ratios that are more favorable to bringing a larger number of people through apprenticeship programs quickly. I'm sure there are good historical reasons why Connecticut's ratios are, I would say, more conservative or more less promoting of larger numbers of apprentices. I think the time has come for us to make those changes and increase the number of apprentices that a given journey person or master can mentor.
So at any one of those bills, and I notice they're all Senate bills, speaks specifically to changing those ratios?
Yes, they do.
Which ones?
The SB 538 has language that speaks to that, and like I said, I don't think it goes far enough, but it's a start.
Okay, so that would be the one that addresses.
That SB 388 also has language on the apprenticeship ratios,
Okay.
and specifically in the skilled trades, which overlaps, of course, with manufacturing.
Right. So, and then my last question, if I might. So we went through a reorganization in the education arena where we disassociated the tech system from the SDE, State Department of Education. And I know it's fairly recent, but can you comment on how that is going?
I can't specifically comment on the effects of that change. I can say that the technical high schools there's certainly an excellent mission and their implementation is good. And I think that there's an opportunity for comprehensive high schools to learn from some of the successes of the tech schools. I hope that as we make necessary and appropriate administrative changes, we're not eliminating the learning that's going on in both directions between comprehensive and technical high schools. But I can't really speak to the specific challenges or improvements that have come about.
Thank you. Thanks for your view on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
any further questions? Nope.
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry about
They're
that. Senator,
anxious to leave.
I'm not catching the head signals. Go ahead.
Tony, I couldn't agree with you more regarding the focus that I believe that the RSPs are doing regarding preparing the next generation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were at the forum last week with the RSPs. I
Yeah.
spoke at that and I brought up some of the collaboration that was needed regarding the business sectors and the schools.
Yes, I cribbed some notes from that to include
yeah.
in my presentation today.
So what do we need to do regarding the State Department of Education and connecting this, having this collaboration? Because I think we are starting to see pockets throughout the state regarding creating career paths.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem, or to me, doesn't seem fast enough.
sure.
What can we do to speed
Sure.
things up?
So I am an educator myself, so I can make this joke, but the challenge of changing an educational institution versus the challenge of moving a cemetery, you get more cooperation from the inhabitants of the cemetery, right? That's actually not quite true, but the the way that you make change or speed up change is the same as you do anywhere, is that you set up the incentive structure so that people are rewarded for doing the right thing. And also it's very important to check in with people to say, well, what's keeping you from doing it? And to ask that question in a very open and non-threatening way, not to say, well, if you don't do this, you're in big trouble, right? But to say, well, what could I do that would make it easier for you to do that and do it quicker? There are, of course, different stakeholders within say the educational bureaucracy or an educational institution, and they may have different opinions about what's standing in the way, and they have different interests, of course, that need to be satisfied. But I think it's very important that we can go to them and say, go to the administrators themselves and say, what's standing in the way? Usually what we have are requirements, if they're not actually contradictory, they may be working at cross purposes, right? So the definition of a high school graduate, as it stands now, what is required to graduate from high school, that may not be fully aligned with the things that are fully supportive of somebody entering the workforce, right? So changing that definition so that we say, this is where we've described someone who I would like to have come work for my company, right? So it's not simply a matter of passing certain tests or having spent certain number of hours on things, but for example, having been in a workplace and having been evaluated in that setting, right? So basing educational success on the performance of the student, not just simply a test of the student.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. And seeing no other comments, thanks for being with us. And I'd like to invite Kate Houlihan, who I think is with us in person. Okay, yes, go ahead, Kate.
Good afternoon. So thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Kate Houlihan. I'm the Executive Director at Manufacturer CT. We are a 113-year-old manufacturing association. Started out as New Haven Manufacturers and rebranded a few years ago. Our mission is really for the fulfillment and the success of manufacturers across different industries. And we do represent several different types of manufacturers within our association, from chocolate to food and beverage to aerospace, medical devices, to one of my most favorite tours we had recently was to Bev and Bell's, which is the manufacturer of the It's a Wonderful Life bell, if you know that movie. So to create a wonderful life for manufacturers here in Connecticut is really one of our missions. And every year we do a survey of our membership. And this year we did something a little bit differently. We kind of addressed up front some of the challenges we know, right? We know that we need to have workforce development. We know that AI has to be more prevalent in our business. And we brought all those up to the forefront, and we asked our members to go a little bit deeper and see what other questions and they could answer that are things that need to help them really change the narrative about manufacturing in Connecticut and help them change their businesses so they can truly be fulfilled and successful and stay here in Connecticut. So I'm going to take the risk that Senator Martin is not going to ask me if I have a way to fix housing in Connecticut. But housing was one of them. And Senator Martin, I spent most of my life in Bristol. We know that Bristol built its housing around New Departure, the Barnes Group, Associated Springs, and that helped build that city and kept those manufacturers there. We have to find a way to bring housing at all different levels in Connecticut, more of it. That has to be one of the priorities, right? We could keep manufacturers here, but if there's not housing, we can't get this college kids or the tech kids to stay here if there's not housing for them. Right, so it's all interwoven. Childcare. Childcare is expensive. You're talking, $thousands per month for childcare. It's a mortgage. Has to have affordable childcare. Energy was at the top of the list. And the next thing was health insurance. So prior to coming over to manufacture CT, I spent most of my life in the property casualty and life and health sales, working with middle market companies, manufacturers, pharmas, large healthcare groups, social service and nonprofit agencies. I was on the property and casualty side, and I put together several insurance programs on that side for trade associations, one of which was the Alliance. I had a property and casualty insurance program for them for 14 years. Health insurance has always been a desire of these trade associations. And when you look at the Alliance or you look at Manufacturer CT, we have members that have one or two employees like Fascia's that qualify for insurance, but no plans. So those small employers, right, the 15 other that really make the backbone of a lot of our manufacturing here in Connecticut don't have access to plans. They don't have capabilities that the larger manufacturers do. So we really need to take a look at that and find out what programs we can put in place to help them from an association benefit perspective. Everything else has been said here, right? We know the things that are needed, but we really need to take a holistic approach at this. We can't address one issue without looking at the other. And I think that really came through in the survey from our members. With housing, childcare, energy, and healthcare at the top. Those were the top things. So, Senator Martin, I don't have an answer. I just looking for discussion from all of us on how that we address some of these things.
I missed the two or a couple of opening remarks, but I got the full commentary of the problems basically facing us. So I will criticize you because the only solution you gave me was potential association healthcare. The rest of them you left on our plate.
I did. Well, there was a forewarning. You missed the forewarning to Senator Martin. I said right up front, I don't have a solution.
Right.
So he was forewarned. Everyone was forewarned.
No, I appreciate that. So I think this is the second or third time now today in presentations that we've heard the advocacy for association healthcare plans.
Yes.
For a pooling of risk. Having worked in risk markets, I understand that concept of pooling of risk. I think it's important. I don't know what the obstacle is, but I think we need to continue to press on there. Energy is going to be problematic in this corner of the state. And childcare, ultimately, I think there's been continued concerns. The per capita is high, and my guess is that we'll have to work on solutions on childcare. But I really want to thank you for the testimony, and I'll turn it over to Senator Martin.
And if I may just add, from an association perspective, we can't fix the housing, but we're trying to figure out how we bring some solutions to the table with some of our programming. So there's a lot of programming and events that we do at Manufacturer CT, and we're doing some of those in partnerships with the RSPs, some of the other associations, and collectively we are talking about housing initiatives that possibly could happen. And so we are having one on January 30th with the Southwestern RSP. That's being held at OEM Controls. Invite anyone here to join us. But we have a great panel, and we are going to be collectively discussing on what we can do, right, in partnership with you on some of these issues.
Great, thank you, Senator Martin.
Thanks. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Any relation to Dan Hulan?
Everyone says that. Ask
Yeah.
me that. No, none at all. None at all.
So regarding housing, it is a dilemma, conundrum, because we have, we have certain statutes that require us to provide affordable housing throughout the whole state. I think it's the H30G legislation, and that creates problems for our smaller communities because they don't have the infrastructure to accommodate some type of high density housing, which you sort of made somewhat of a reference to regarding Bristol. And, we have the Associated Spring, we've had New Departure, and that always preceded the housing, right? The work, the business came and established themselves. They grew, particularly in Bristol, regarding the Barnes family and Associated Spring, New Departure, and they just continued to, their sales dictated what they needed to produce. But the point is, surrounding housing was created from downtown and sort of expanded out. West part of Bristol is the oldest housing stock in Bristol. But through the years and through the the establishment of roads and we went out from the downtown areas to the suburbs, so to speak. And Bristol's no different. We went to the outskirts of Bristol. I remember in the 80s, coming from a construction family and land developing and having built single families, multifamilies, from condominiums to congregate housing, the pushback that we experienced through neighborhood groups. No, we're building too many condominiums, and then zoning changes and the master plan of development for the city changed. And as a result of that, we just stopped the high density housing in Bristol. And similarly, that took place throughout most of Connecticut. And now here we are today screaming that we need more affordable housing. And this conundrum regarding smaller communities, providing some type of affordable housing and not just letting the cities, the urban cities, control or having to build all the high density housing. So if you could find an answer for that, it would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Because I know here it's going to be an ongoing discussion here in this building. I think part of the conversation needs to take place is with the local municipalities, the smaller towns. They have to be at the table in addition to zoning boards and have an understanding of what needs to be provided. So I don't have an answer for it. I know you don't have an ansher for it.
So Senator
This
Martin, I
committee
think-
doesn't have an answer for it.
So I think some of it's being creative and how we think outside of the box, right? So I got, one of our members is in the northeast section of the state, and they're in Stafford Springs. They also have a facility in Ohio. And what they did in Ohio, because they part of it was transportation issues and some of it was housing issues, right? And what they did was actually find ways to help with the transportation from new housing developments to their facilities, which were easily accessible by public transportation, right? Going back to the conversation, right? CBIA brought it up, and from Chris did from CBIA, and the Micro Transport. And here in Connecticut, they're willing to do that as well. They actually brought vans on, and they bought a van to go into different communities and bring the employees into the northeast part of the state because it's hard to get to. So it has to be a collaboration between, urban, the smaller towns, zoning being at the table, finding a way creatively to build the housing, right? And again, affordable, mid, and, mid-range housing as well. Want to keep people here to get the people to the workers, and how do we do that on a creative basis? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Thank you. I really appreciate the testimony. Now we have Jet. Oh, sorry, Mary.
I'm in the manufacturing caucus, but not on the Commerce Committee. So that's why you keep forgetting me, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on a housing group down in my town, Wallingford. We have a manufacturing town. And one of the things we're going to try to do is get the manufacturers to come to the planning and zoning hearings and talk about this need for housing for their workers. And maybe get the clergy to come too. Because when you try to do density housing, you get a real pushback. We've done, for example, a conversion of a nursing home to housing for the local workers. And even just doing that was a big controversy because people are used to single family houses. But when you run out of space for single family houses, you got to do density. That's the only other choice. And I think you said, what can you do? And I'm thinking, if the manufacturers who are local could come to these hearings and say, we're trying to recruit people, housing is a problem for us. That might be the first time planning and zoning ever heard that on the record. So maybe that would help.
I think that's a absolutely phenomenal idea. So I believe Sam signed in some OEM controls in I think it's Stratford. He is coordinating the Southwestern RSP conversation that we're having on the 30th about this. And he has been to planning and zoning in his area. And it's helping with some of the initiatives that he's partnering with contractors in that area for both high density housing and some single family units as well. And it is a collaboration, right? It is the manufacturers coming to the table and going to planning and zoning. And if that helps from our perspective to get some more of the manufacturers to the table to do that, I'm happy to take that on and talk with our, got it. They'll be there. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And next up, we have Jeff Macenti, Controller of PTA Corporation, manufacturer CT.
Good afternoon. As you stated, I'm the controller at PTA Corporation. We are a plastic injection molding company located in Oxford. We also have a facility out in Boulder, Colorado. We service mostly the durable medical equipment. We're proud to say that we produce parts that help save Damar Hamlin's life a couple of years ago, the Buffalo Bills player that collapsed on the football field. Couple of things that we have taken advantage of that the state has initiated and that are working really well for us, and that is the funding into the technical high schools and the expansion of those programs. We have a number of people that have that are currently working for us that that are really excelling because of the fact that they've gone through those programs. The other item, actually it's two items, is the funding of CCAT. And while we have, I believe we're at a size now where we can't take advantage of that anymore, but what that allowed us to do is to invest in equipment that we might not have dipped our toe in, shall I say. And that is, we purchased some robotics. We purchased some advanced manufacturing equipment. And while we may have eventually invested in it, it sped up the process. And we have continued to move in that direction. So I would encourage that for a lot of our small manufacturers out there. And also the the Manufacturing Investment Fund, a small portion of our business is in the defense area. So we have taken advantage of the funding there to start the whole cybersecurity process. So a couple of items that really need to be addressed, and the first one is the electric rates. I mentioned Colorado because we are about the same size footprint. We have about the same number of machines. We're basically mirror operations. Our electric bill this past month was around $41,000. Out in Colorado, it was 19. That $240,000 basically it represents any type of a wage increase that we would, a half of the wage increase that we would provide our employees in a year. And, you know, we have to continue to invest in our employees. And in order to try and retain and attract, we have to offer competitive rates. Colorado is are the same rates as Connecticut. So that's really the big differentiator between Connecticut and Colorado in terms of costs. So I can only imagine what it would be in other states. You know, we're trying to compete against other plastic injection molders throughout the country. And then, of course, the paid sick leave. We have spent hundreds of hours across a number of people in the admin area trying to decipher and implement this paid sick leave. In order to remain competitive, we already offered paid time off. And, you know, it's the typical 2 weeks to start, eventually work up after a number of years up to 4 weeks. And it just adds another admin burden to try and figure out, to try to remain compliant for something that was kind of already there. So I fear that this is going to be a slippery slope and continuing to expand. You know, we're a manufacturer. We're trying to just make plastic parts. And anyway, that's all I really have to say.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Certainly the energy is no surprise in terms of the price differential. Not sure where we can go on that. I appreciate the observations on paid sick leave and administration thereof. Any comments from the committee? Hold on one second.
Thanks so much for being with us and also hanging in there. I know it's been a little bit this morning, and yeah, time away from the office is you know, is costly. So earlier, and the energy thing is, you know, really the elephant in the room here across all committees and all caucuses. But earlier in the day, we heard from the CMO that we are offering a number of programs for manufacturers to try to help them contain and in some instances reduce energy costs. Have, as an example, your company engaged in any of those? Jeff?
We have brought in some consultants, and they talk about lighting. It's not lighting. These injection molding machines utilize a lot of energy. And then, of course, there's the cooling load in the summertime. So that differentiator between the two in Colorado and Connecticut, that was just this past month. So it's not even cooling season, and it's double the price. So no, the consultants that we brought in from Eversource really couldn't offer anything.
And so what about the Office of the Chief Manufacturing Officer? is that a resource in terms of, there was a description of programs that are being offered to look, I mean, it's all about supply. We get that, but where we can, as quick as we can, try to trim some of these expenses in a meaningful way, we would hope to scale that. So,
I'll have to take a look at that. I'll be honest with you, I did not take a look at that.
and I guess my question is, are we on our end doing an appropriate job of communicating, telegraphing these kind of services, which may be helpful? I mean, it's not going to address the problem, but it helps to ameliorate it in some way. And so you're not aware of these programs?
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful for us to understand. And you made a comment with regard to the paid family leave that you as a company were already there. So if that is the case, then does that not move you out from underneath this implementation?
Well, it's not the paid family leave, it's the paid sick.
Oh, paid sick.
So it's the fact that the employees don't have to call in, until an hour before when we're trying to plan our production floor. It makes it difficult to schedule, to say the least. And as well as just making sure that everything is tracked properly, according to the regulations. Again, it's just another burden.
Yeah, I hear you. So I would just say, and I maybe should have directed this to Chris, but I do see him in the room. However, you can quantify, and I know this is very early in the game, as this rolls out, that's very important for us to have as we continue to understand, refine, and implement this thing. So I don't know if it's too early for that. I mean, I had a conversation on another issue similar to this not too long ago, and of course, it was actually right after COVID, and the response to me was, look, we can't give you anything because, everything has been, flatlined on numbers and so forth, but wherever this can be quantified, that's very important.
Okay. We certainly will.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the testimony. Last but not least, Alan Nadeau, Principal of Southington Tool and Manufacturing Corporation.
Thank you for having me here today. We were asked what type of things are working and what's something that we could use some help with. So thinking about those things, I really like to introduce first. My name is Alan Nadeau. I'm with Southington Tool and Manufacturing in Plantsville, Connecticut. We employ about 35 people. We have a 25,000 square foot facility, so we are.
Could you
truly...
tilt in the microphone just a little bit? Just tilt it
Sure.
in towards you.
Oh,
make it easier for you.
Is that better? So we are truly a small manufacturer. I also sit on the New England Spring and Metal Stamping Association board as their outgoing government affairs person or legislation. So I'm here today representing about 72 companies that are based in central Connecticut, actually in Bristol. So one of the things that really works well for us is the Manufacturers Innovation Fund. Those programs that are run, the Incumbent Worker Training Program, the Apprenticeship Program, the Rev-Up Program, and the Internship Program, all are very, very beneficial to the companies that I represent. So you know, it always looks like maybe some sort of assistance or handout, but what we really think is we're able to take employees that we already have, get them into a higher skilled or more advanced skill level, and then hopefully we reciprocate by paying higher wages and increasing the tax base. So those programs, I think, work well for us and for the state. One of the other things that I think works very well in the state is the technical high schools and college program. Each year we take at least one student from the technical schools, and we bring them in their junior year. We do a paid internship with them. They work through our summer also, but they will do their work-based learning. And they also stay with us through their senior year. At the end of that program, if they're happy with us and we're happy with them, we hire them. And if that works out, then we put them into the apprenticeship program. So we vet them before we even bother wasting money for the apprenticeship program. And we appreciate that the state offers this. That has worked very, very well for us. We hired 2 in 2024 out of this program. We're looking to fill our slot for our junior coming in, and they've actually attracted one of their friends to another department, and that person will most likely get an apprenticeship at another level. Now, what works well with the state program is you already have people that want to learn. There are students that have kind of proved to their teachers that they can go out to facilities like ours and actually be responsible, right? So if I get a student that comes in and is willing to learn and comes on time and doesn't play with their phone, we can basically teach them everything else. And that's where it really works out well. And I think that program is great. And I wanted to thank you guys for supporting that. What doesn't work for us? You've already heard healthcare is beat to death, and I understand that you probably have a better handle on it than we do. But to give you a real life example, out of the 35 people that we employ, 21 of them have insurance with us. 5 of those have their spouse on their plan, and 1 has a family. For those 21 people and their spouses in that one family, last year, 81%, which is what our company pays, was $257,000. It's quite a bit of money. I mean, it's, you know, it's something that we think is necessary. We want to treat our employees well. We want to do right by them. There's no doubt. But I think that if we look at these association health plans, it really could help everyone. And I think we're kind of on that same page. One of the other things that can help our industry, and we've tried this as an objective for the CMC a number of years, is the R&D tax credit for pass-through entities. New technologies, right? They're expensive. The learning curve can be high on some of them. And for our C Corp, our C corporations in NESMA, they have taken advantage of these. They've learned new technologies and they've brought different types of revenue streams to their companies. And I think part of that is because they knew that there was some sort of safety net for them, some little return that they could use towards a tax credit. The other entities that are not C Corps don't have that ability, and they keep screaming for, hey, this would help us also. We'd be able to do the same type of work without being out on the line as much as we are. So again, that's going to be an objective of the CMC this year, and we hope that you would support that. Those are just the few items that I had. I just wanted to add my 2 cents. So if you have any questions.
Well, first, I want to thank you for the testimony, for holding on and sticking with us for the testimony. The healthcare, you suggested 257. I'm guessing that's about a 50%. It's a cost share.
That's 81.
81%
We
of the
do.
cost of the policy.
Yes.
Is 257.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And essentially, you want to just run me by again the nature of the apprenticeship program you're finding right now, the pre-apprentice program that's working? What's the title on that? Taking notes, I,
So we're not using the pre-apprentice program.
right.
And we haven't used the internship program. What we've done is we feel that there's an obligation from us. We're not going to go out and find people that can just basically come in and do this work. So we decided long ago that we need to train them.
Okay.
So by taking advantage of the state's program with the technical schools, we get vetted students that already have some sort of skin in the game. They want to be in this industry. And they need to learn more. So we invest in them by having them come in for their work-based learning. We pay them for, for their time there. No one works for free. So it's a paid internship that we sponsor. And then if they make that through the entire program at the end of there, we'll hire them. Then we'll take advantage of the program through the state, the apprenticeship program, which is sponsored by the MIF. Because at that point, at least we know they're going to stay with us. They've had the ability to learn, and they're a good candidate to go through this.
Perfect. I was just getting the steps, so that's very helpful. Any
Yeah.
questions from the group? Hold on one second.
So rest assured, and thank you for your testimony and staying on with us. We have proposed, I think it was in the last 3 sessions, this change on the R&D tax credit. And I venture to say, Alan, that we'll probably, again, do it. This is the legislative process. It takes iterations and multiple sessions and so forth, but this is very important. And thanks for, keep beating the drum on this.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, Al.
Hi.
Hey, Alan, so regarding the health insurance, I'm just curious, what's the deductible?
Our deductible last year was $4,500.
45? And that's the cost of probably $16,000 per employee altogether? Yours, the 80% plus the 20. Is that
Yeah,
about?
I'm sorry, I didn't figure that out, and my math right now isn't going very good. So,
Okay.
but
Regarding the apprenticeship and the internships
Mhm.
that you provide, could you use more from the technical schools? I know you probably, are you tapping into the Bristol Tech?
we tap into Bristol Tech, HC Wilcox. We sit on the technology boards for both of those, but also on the Southern High School. But we hire for skilled labor out of the technical schools. Could I use more? We're very, very small. 35 is not a lot of people. That includes our office and our shop. It's hard to have more than 1 to 2 apprentices or trainees at one time. I wish I could. If we were larger, I definitely could, because it's a great program.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think that concludes, and I'm just going to turn it over to my co-chair.
And thank you all who've participated. I just want to recognize the members who were remote online with us. Today's Manufacturing Caucus, that was Representative Kite, Senator Summers, Representatives Reyes, Gucker, Caravos, Farr, Rep. Mashinsky, who did join us in the room, Rep. Corpus, and Rep. Napoli, Senator Wong, Rep. Delnicki, and Reps Ryan and Piscopo. So there were a number of other legislators who were with us as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That concludes